Good afternoon, Professor. Hello to my peers. Today I'm covering the story of the Karuk people. My name is James, and I'm going to be walking you all through the story of them, the foods they consumed, and the societal impacts that they had upon modern day California. So, as you might have guessed, the Karuk people were a native tribe. They were localized in the northern regions of California, surrounding the Klamath Mountain range. This mountain range went into Oregon as well, so they kind of straddled the modern day borders between Oregon and California. If anyone's ever traveled to the Mount Shasta region, think that sort of environment. So it's an environment which is really rugged, covered in mountains, with towering trees, and especially, and this is key to their culture, flowing rivers. The Karuk people were a very unique civilization. They didn't have much relations with the surrounding tribes. Their language actually is very unique. It doesn't seem to be similar at all to any of the neighboring tribes, according to experts. It doesn't really resemble anything, leading the experts to assume that the Karuk people have been quite isolationist throughout their history, and kind of their first contact with Westerners during the late, I believe, 17th and early 18th centuries was kind of their first exposure to, non-Karuk people. So they've been living in the Klamath Mountain range region for centuries, if not millennia. And this, again, is to do with their unique language and their unique physiology. The Klamath Mountain range is really biodiverse. In current day, the Mount Shasta region is very popular for camping or recreational activities, fishing as well. But that whole region, if you think Yosemite is sort of on the border there, Crater Lake up in Oregon as well, these really biodiverse, rich ecosystems. And the Karuk people really much valued that. Part of their ideology and their culture was a sort of symbiosis with their environment. And I wanted to touch on that because that's really key to their whole culture and how they treated their food. So through the Klamath Mountain region runs the biggest river there, which is the Klamath River. This river played an essential role in the livelihoods of the Karuk people. There are many fish that ran through that river, that had nurseries upstream, and these fish would migrate right to these pools upstream to reproduce. The most notable of all these fish for the Karuk people was the salmon. Now, touching on their tradition and relationship with salmon, the Karuk people had a quite unique relationship. They would celebrate their closeness to it and their respect for the animal through the first salmon ceremony. This ceremony, it's a traditional ceremony where the tribal chief would essentially select a salmon chief, which was like a very respected role. Not much is known really about how it was selected, but think a person of high value within the tribe or someone you wanted to celebrate. That person would select a fisherman who would be their nominee to get the first salmon of the mating season, right? So when these rivers are chock full of salmon migrating towards the nursing grounds or coming from the nursing grounds out to sea, this fisherman would fish that one, and that first fish was like a big celebration, right, of the start of this festive season. So as you can kind of tell, salmon played a huge role in their diets, along with one other key item to the Karuk people, which was acorns. So really interestingly, there was a statistic where 50% of their diet either composed of acorn meal or salmon, right? And if you think acorn meal, you can create breads from that sort of item there. So two quite useful items here, but a very set diet. It was supplemented by other things such as berries, honey, roots as well, and mushrooms. And they did hunt some wild animals as well, notoriously bears actually. Although just given their situation and location along the Klamath River, it makes sense why their diet was so heavily focused on the salmon. People were very respected custodians. They really took care of the environment that they lived in, and formed a real symbiotic relationship with it. So the two practices they were very famous for was their use of controlled forest fires to limit the explosive growth of trees and kind of preserve their area when forest fires would hit. This is a practice actually used today by the national parks, such as Yosemite, who use it to control overgrowth and at-risk areas. they performed these controlled fires, and they were very good at practicing sustainable practices with the salmon. It was very easy to overfish the salmon of the river, but because of their ritualistic and respect for the animal, they limited their fishing, only taking what they needed. Now, lastly, I just wanted to touch on the downfall of the Karuk people. So, when European or Westerner migrants started moving westwards from the eastern United States, they began taking up this valuable land, especially during the gold rush, because the gold rush was quite focused within California to the Klamath Mountain region. And as a result, more people come in, and as well with the introduction of hydroelectric power, dams started being built throughout the 20th century along the Klamath River. So when you're constructing these dams, it's interfering with the migration patterns of the fish, particularly the salmon. So now you have these big walls of metal and steel in the middle of the river. The salmon can no longer travel up to their mating ground, meaning that the salmon population completely died off. A stat says today that there's about 4% of the population that was pre the construction of the 1903 dam, which was the very first dam built along the Klamath River. And in turn, with the salmon population completely dissolving away, the people of the Karuk tribe also suffered severely. The Klamath region is known today as quite an impoverished region of California. There's not really that many economic opportunities. So a lot of the remaining Karuk people who didn't emigrate from the region live in pretty sad poverty. There are initiatives to regain their land and to take the dams, and these are actually in progress, especially the dam deconstruction, as the Environmental Protection Agency has lobbied for it as well. Unfortunately, though, these things do take time, and all we can say is that time will tell. Hopefully one day the Karuk people can return to their native lands, can live a healthier life, and return to their traditional ways of cooking. There's a lot of health in that diet, and they really were sustainable custodians of their natural environment. And it's sad to see them not be able to, achieve that role anymore. So hopefully, within the next few decades, maybe as these dams start coming down, maybe Karuk people could start moving back to the region and contribute more to maintaining the biodiversity. Because especially with climate change constantly rising, I think having sustainable individuals responsible for such a delicate ecosystem and a diverse ecosystem is all we need and would make our world so much better.